Hello everyone, welcome to the Departamento Loratorum. My name is Max, and today I'd like to talk to you about Tzeentch. The 10th edition codex for Thousand Suns has finally arrived, along with a new and improved combat patrol. This is a great time to start an army of the Sons of Magnus, and you may be looking for some inspiration. In this video, I'd like to show off some lesser known Tzeentchian warbands that you can base your army on. Now, before we get started, I have to tell you that this video is going to be a little different from the others in this series. I looked and just could not find many non-Thousand Sun Tzeentch-focused warbands with enough lore written on them to justify including in this video. I was only able to really find 3 with enough on them to fill out a section. This is probably due to the Thousand Suns aesthetic being very distinct. It's hard to make a non-Thousand Suns warband fit into it. And since they've been the main Tzeentch Chaos Marines since 7th edition, it'd make sense that others have fallen by the wayside. While this is understandable, it's still annoying, both for me trying to make this video and as a fan of Chaos in general. I really like how Warhammer has so many side factions and examples for you to choose for your army, or to use as inspiration for your own custom faction. It makes the galaxy feel so much more fleshed out and interesting, and I'm upset that Tzeentch doesn't have as much of that as the other Chaos gods. I also don't want this video to have just 3 examples. Ideally, I'd want it to have 9 to fit in with the sacred number of Tzeentch. So I figured it's a video on Chaos Space Marines devoted to the Changer of Ways. It's fine if it gets a little weird. The first 3 examples in this video will be the canon non-Thousand Suns Tzeentchian warbands, and then the next 3 will be minor Thousand Suns warbands that I found interesting. There are actually a ton of these. I can and probably will eventually do a full video on more of them, but for now I picked 3 to showcase. If you think that this is a betrayal of the format of this video, I understand, but I personally would rather make an interesting video than one that strictly abides by a set of arbitrary rules that I made up. For the final 3 warbands on this list, I could have just picked some more Thousand Suns Thrall bands, but I didn't want to do that. 6 of them would just be too many, especially for a video that's supposed to focus on lesser known examples for your army. I eventually decided that, since I've talked about how you can use these canon warbands as examples and inspiration for your own custom army in previous videos, I should show that off here. So I'm going to go over 3 unique custom warbands that I've created myself. I hope that you enjoy them, and if you do, please use and tweak them in any way that you'd like. The goal of these videos is to help you make an army that you enjoy, so don't feel like you have to rigidly stick to a set of rules or a template if that's not what makes you happy. I'd also like to mention that if this video does inspire you to pick up any minis, I have an affiliate link with Geekery Games that you can use to get 5% off eligible orders. Just put in code DEPARTLORE at checkout. Each purchase also helps the channel, so if you're looking for a discount on some Warhammer kits, check them out. I'll put a link to them in the description. Without any further ado, let's get started with a warband that has a close connection to the Thousand Suns. The Oracles of Change. Originally a Loyalist chapter known as the Lectors of Ixis, they became the Oracles of Change after an event known as the Abyssal Crusade. I have discussed this in previous videos, and I plan to do a full video on it in the future, but to summarize, in M37, a traitorous Imperial Saint managed to convince several Space Marine chapters to undertake a crusade into the Eye of Terror. As you'd expect, it ended badly, and most of the chapters involved in the crusade fell to chaos. It's unknown what caused the Lectors of Ixis to become worshippers of Tzeentch, but since their rebirth as the Oracles of Change, they've campaigned across the galaxy in the name of the Changer of Ways, while also vying with one another for power and influence within their warband. Led by the sorcerer Amadeus Volkstein, formerly an epistolary of the chapter known as Vanius, they have invaded the world of Rashad Prime and have taken part in the Nachman Rift War, as well as the invasion of the Stygius sector, fighting on the planet of Mordian. A faction of the Oracles of Change also fought against the Silver Skulls on the planet of Valoris Quintus, as detailed in the book Silver Skulls Portents. They were led by a sorcerer of the Thousand Suns named Kartecha, who had joined the warband after its founding and was granted command over a portion of it. The Oracles of Change wore red armor, with gold trim and yellow 8-pointed stars of chaos painted onto it, and their symbol is a yellow star of chaos. If you wanted to create a warband that uses Thousand Suns models without being Thousand Suns themselves, the Oracles of Change are your best bet. They have a close enough relationship with the Thousand Suns that you could easily justify them using their more unique models by just saying that they're influenced by them. Even including a Magnus probably wouldn't be too big of a leap. You could say it's like joining up together for a single campaign or something. They don't really have a defined theme or combat style, so you could go in any direction that you wanted with them without any trouble. Let's move on to another former Loyalist chapter that fell to the embrace of the Lord of Change, the Scourged. Once known as the Seekers of Truth, the chapter often fought alongside the Inquisition, stamping out heresy and putting Imperial citizens, guilty and innocent alike, to the torch in order to prevent its spread. This caused Chapter Master Gallus Herodicus a great deal of distress, and he prayed to the Emperor for a means to tell when someone was lying. but Tzeentch heard the chapter master's prayers and decided to answer them. And, trickster god that he is, there was a catch. The Seekers of Truth were blessed with the ability to hear every lie that was spoken by man. Driven mad by the never-ending stream of deceit, the Seekers of Truth became the Scourged, determined to destroy an Imperium that they now saw as corrupted beyond salvation. In order to aid the Scourged in battle, Tzeentch has gifted them with the ability to see into the future, learning some of their enemies' plans and predicting their movements. They're also able to use the constant stream of lies they hear to their advantage, voicing them in combat to shock their foes and allowing them to gain the upper hand. The Warband has taken part in the 13th Black Crusade, as well as fighting in the War of Beasts alongside dozens of other Chaos Warbands from the Traitor Legions and beyond. They've also joined the Caradon campaign against the Forge World of Metallica, and assisted in the Thousand Sons' attempt to build their own pocket empire in the Prosper and Rift War. The Scourge's color scheme is dark blue with red helmets, pauldrons, and gauntlets, and golden trim. Their symbol is a stylized white eye of Tzeentch. I really love the lore of the Scourge. I can't exactly put my finger on what it is that I love the most, but I just find it super fun and interesting. It's really great and helpful when the warbands have a concrete backstory that you can dig into and get inspiration from. You could also easily play these guys using either Chaos Space Marine or Thousand Sons rules, so they could provide a nice bit of variety for you. And on a bit of a more personal note, their color scheme is similar to one that I painted my first box of Chaos Space Marines in as a kid, so I have a sense of nostalgia when I look at them. I wish I had a photo of it to share. I'm sure it looked absolutely fantastic, and I in no way needed to thin my paints or do anything to improve. And if you wanted another army that can bridge the gap between Thousand Sons and Chaos Space Marines, this next warband is for you. The Sons of the Cyclops. The Black Legion will take on recruits from any background, so long as they swear fealty to the War Master, Abaddon the Despoiler. These recruits will often group together into sub-warbands within the Greater Legion, often being connected by a shared origin, preferred combat style, or devotion to a particular chaos god. The Sons of the Cyclops are a Tzeentchian warband within the Black Legion, primarily being made up of former members of the Thousand Sons. The smallest of the warbands devoted to an individual god, they still remain incredibly powerful and influential within the Legion due to their skills with sorcery, with their abilities as seers making them particularly valuable advisors to Abaddon. They're led by sorcerer lords such as Yithgamor the Deceiver and Zarafistan, although the Black Legion series of novels implies that these may be titles rather than individuals. Like the rest of the Black Legion, the Sons of the Cyclops fought in the 13th Black Crusade, notably taking part in the Diamor campaign, as well as in the Nachmund Rift War. If you wanted to know more about the Thousand Sons members of the Black Legion, I'd recommend the Black Legion series of novels. They're just good books, and the main character is Iskander Kaon, a Thousand Son sorcerer and one of the founding members of the Legion. The Sons of the Cyclops primarily wear the black and gold of the Black Legion, with maybe some added blue elements to call back to their origins as Sons of Magnus the Red. If you wanted variety, the Black Legion and the Sons of the Cyclops are your best pick. You're not only starting a Thousand Sons army, you're starting an army with the potential to expand to include elements of every Chaos faction. They can be one consistent force that gives you access to everything that Chaos has to offer, which is just awesome, and I'm really glad that there is something like that exists. And, as previously mentioned, there is also a ton of lore written on them, including some very good novels, so if you wanted more material to read on them to really help you understand them, get into them, they would be great, especially compared to a lot of other more minor warbands, which have very little. The next three warbands, or thrall bands as they're called, that we will be covering are all going to be splinter factions of the Thousand Sons Legion, as previously mentioned. All of them appear in the Warzone Fenris book, as well as in the 8th edition Thousand Sons Codex. Let's start with the warband that has the closest connection to their Primarch, the Blades of Magnus. Members of the Cult of Manipulation, the Blades of Magnus decided to use their skill at plots in an attempt to save their Primarch, Magnus the Red. They hunted down demons that Magnus had made pacts with, slaying them in secret in order to break the bonds between the demons and their father. But Magnus did not approve of their work. When he discovered what they had done, he punished them by reducing them to mindless slaves, sworn directly to his will. They now act as puppets for the Crimson King, fighting solely at his discretion and on his behalf. The Blades of Magnus have taken part in the invasion of Fenris, and helped their Primarch destroy a Sisters of Silence convent on the world of Gesina, falling from the sky as a magic dust before being formed into Rubric Marines by their Primarch in order to wipe out the Sisters. The armor of the Blades of Magnus is gold with blue trim, and their pauldrons depict a black eye, the symbol of the Cult of Manipulation. If you wanted to build an army focused around Magnus, using him as a centerpiece, these guys would be a great pick. Their color scheme looks awesome, and I think they would look great supporting their Primarch, just surrounding him and acting and doing whatever he needs them to do. I will admit, them being completely personality-less puppets is not something I normally like in an army, but if that appeals to you, then the Blades of Magnus are right up your alley. Let's now move on to another thrall band, one that has a much more distinct personality. The Tizcan Host. The rubric of Ahriman wrought many changes upon the Astartes of the Thousand Sons Legion, and the Tizcan Host are no exception. Since the rubric was cast, the sorcerers of the Warband all believe that they have been reborn as avenging angels, pure and superior to all around them. Despite this perceived purity, they are a bloodthirsty warband, believing it is their sworn duty to destroy the enemies of their Primarch. The Tizcan Host call the Tzaangors that accompany them the Choir of Eagles, a term that goes back to the auxiliaries of the Great Crusade, although their current cries are far more grotesque. They also call their rubric the Serapha, perceiving their stillness and silence as stoic loyalty instead of the emptiness that it truly is. Like the other Thrall bands, the Tizcan Host took part in the invasion of Fenris. Their colors are described as white with gold trim, although all of their art depicts them with a light blue instead of white. Their symbol is a golden crown, known as the Horned Crown, from an ancient god of Prospero known as the King of all Angels. I feel like the Tizcan Host have a ton of kit bash potential, what with their angelic delusions and all that. Stealing Blood Angels or swooping Hawksbits would be really fun. There's a ton that you could do with them. Also, if you prefer a more direct play style with a lot more heavy firepower, these guys seem like they would fit right into that. If I was to make an army of them, I'd definitely go with the white and gold color scheme that's described rather than the blue and gold one that's shown. I feel like it's way more unique and striking and definitely looks more angelic, and I do not know why the art doesn't depict it. Although if you want a striking color scheme, this final Thrall band really has that one down. The Silver Suns. Exiled from the Legion for aiding in the rubric of Ahriman, the Silver Suns have become seekers of precious metals with certain magical properties throughout the galaxy, killing any who stand between them and their goals. Once they have these materials, they will then use them to create twisted demon engines, using them to acquire future materials in a vicious, brutal cycle. For a minor Thousand Sons Thrall band, the Silver Suns have been surprisingly active. They took part in the invasion of Fenris like the others, but have also fought against many Xenos races. In an assault on the Necron-Nephrek dynasty, the enchantments they put on their Mauler fiends prevented the Necron's necrodermis from forming correctly, instead coalescing into a twisted ball of limbs and body parts after their defeat. Under the command of exalted sorcerer Amenek's Soul Rend, the Silver Suns also attacked the Tau Sept world of Daiketh, trying to retrieve a scepter made of rare viridium crystals that was being held in an Earthcast research base. However, due to the stiff resistance of the Firecast warriors in battlesuits, the conflict is still ongoing. The Silver Suns have blue armor with silver trim, and their symbol is a yellow marking of the Thousand Sons Cult of Time. If you wanted to make use of a lot of demon engines, and possibly the new Sekitar robots, the Silver Suns would be a good choice for your warband. They also appear to commonly go up against Xenos forces, so they might work well if you're in a playgroup with a lot of Xenos armies, especially Tau since the war in Daiketh still rages on. These final 3 warbands are going to be the custom Tzeentchian ones that I created. I really hope that you enjoy them. Let's begin with a warband from one of the 9 original Traitor Legions, the Unforeseen. Every member of the Alpha Legion knows the value in planning for unexpected occurrences. The Unforeseen strive to be those occurrences. Led by the Sorcerer Lord Verhov, the Unforeseen are a warband of the Alpha Legion that believe in testing their fellow sons of Alpharius. Feeling that only the cleverest and most prepared should succeed, they will assault other Alpha Legion warbands, attacking during the most crucial stages of their plans, sometimes ruining decades of hard work. Although, as the Unforeseen would say, it was not hard enough if they were caught unprepared. Many Alpha Legion Chaos Lords have started incorporating the Unforeseen into their plans, and keeping a paranoid eye out for their dropships, which is exactly what the Unforeseen would wish. The warband makes heavy use of sorcerers and Tzeentchian demons, which Lord Verhov maintains is solely to ensure that they can carry out their mission. However, he has begun to rely heavily on chaotic artifacts, using them to predict the movements of other Alpha Legion warbands. He's committed significant resources to acquiring more of them, and even bargaining with greater Zemens of Tzeentch for information on their locations, leaving other members of the Unforeseen to worry that they will soon fall further under the sway of the Changer of Ways. For their colors, you could go with any Alpha Legion scheme. There is a lot of variety there. I am partial to the green one though. I think it would help them stand out, especially when so many Tzeentchian warbands are blue. The Unforeseen were really fun to make. I enjoy the 40k Alpha Legion a lot, especially seeing how far they've fallen from their original high-minded ideals. I also think that they work really well with Tzeentch, and I was surprised that there really weren't more Tzeentchian Alpha Legion warbands that already existed, and I wanted to give them a bit of a connection to demons so that way you could use them in your army if you so choose, especially since that demons are being incorporated more into the god-marked Chaos Legions. For this next warband, I decided to go in a more unique direction for the followers of Tzeentch and incorporate some different, more unique elements. The Bloodless Legion. Throughout the millennia, many sons of Sanguinius have tried to find a cure for the Black Rage and the Red Thirst, the twin flaws that afflict their bloodline. Well, most of this work is done by the sanguinary priests. The librarians of the Blood Angels and their descendants have also attempted to find a psychic cure for their curse. Epistolary Ferrator of the Angels in Carmine was one such librarian. He struggled in research for decades, always feeling like the truth was just out of his grasp. But when he heard the tale of Brother Calistarius being buried alive, conquering the Black Rage, and being reborn as Mephiston on Armageddon, he was inspired. Death, it seemed, is the cure, and if he could conquer death, then he could conquer the curse. He began experimenting, both on himself and his fallen brothers, delving into dark and powerful magics in order to accomplish his goal. When he was discovered, his brothers attempted to slay him. In his desperation, he swore his soul to the god of change, and was granted the ability to bring his fallen brothers back from the dead as mindless, rotting puppets, using them to effect his escape. Ferritor has since created the Bloodless Legion, gathering other renegade descendants of the Blood Angels to his banner, training other Psychers on how to raise the dead, and creating a shambling horde of undead humans and Astartes, as well as other, fouler creations, to scour the galaxy for more information on how to overcome the Black Rage and Red Thirst. Ferritor and the sorcerers under his command have had some measure of success in combating their flaw, being able to suppress their thirst for blood and sustain themselves with warp energy, at the cost of becoming shriveled, twisted monstrosities. Ferritor is convinced that he is closing in on a breakthrough, although it seems unlikely that Tzeentch, always unwilling to give up an amusing pawn, will ever allow him to succeed. The Bloodless Legion wear dark blue armor with tarnished gold trim and red accents. I didn't really have a good symbol for them, but if you have any ideas for that in the comments, please feel free to let me know. With this warband, I wanted to introduce some undead elements that Tzeentch doesn't typically get, and also bring in some vampiric flavor, taking a lot of inspiration from the Warhammer Fantasy vampire counts alongside the more traditional Dracula and Nosferatu. You could make use of a lot of Blood Angels and Soulblight Gravelord bits in this, maybe even use some Nurgle bits as well to really make your Marines feel like the Walking Dead. And if your friend picked the Blood Angels or one of their descendants as their army, you could do a cool rivalry with them. For this final warband, I took a lot of inspiration from another group on this list, as well as some previous warbands that I've covered in other videos, and it may have ended up being my favorite one of them all. The Gnawing Blades. Formerly a chapter of Space Marines known as the Golden Wardens, they were obsessed with the preservation of knowledge after their homeworld lost much of their own and fell into a dark age. Led by their chapter master, Cassius Fell, the whole chapter was deployed to the planet of Biliotan IV, home to a massive archive of data for the whole segmentum, in order to defend it from an Orc Waaagh. The Golden Wardens took up a defensive position around the archive, but were soon forced back by the overwhelming force of the Orcs. Retreating with the scribes into the archive's undercroft, they watched in horror as the ancient tomes and scrolls were destroyed by the brutal Xenos. Desperate to preserve what lore they could, Cassius Fell ordered the Golden Wardens to devour the surviving scribes, using the omophagia organ every Space Marine has, in order to preserve their knowledge. After continuing to hold out for several weeks, the Golden Wardens were at last relieved by other Imperial forces on the planet. But once they discovered what the Wardens had done to the scribes, they cursed them as traitors and attacked. The Wardens fled into the Eye of Terror, and in their bitterness changed their name to the Gnawing Blades and swore themselves to Tzeentch, for he appreciated knowledge at any cost. The Gnawing Blades attack repositories of lore and seek out skilled experts across the galaxy. They focus on melee combat, trying to defeat their opponents quickly to get to the fun part, the after-battle feast. Their peculiar appetite causes increased rates of mutation, spawndom, and indigestion. Even other Gnawing Blades are not safe, as dead or seriously wounded Marines are often devoured by their brothers after the battle. They are still led by Cassius Fell, who has since ascended to a demon prince. He is a massive, intimidating figure, blind but covered in hundreds of mouths that whisper the knowledge of those he has consumed and warn him of incoming attacks on the battlefield. The Gnawing Blades' armor is white with red trim, and their symbol is a red-fanged maw, in the same style as the Flesh Eaters. These guys may be my favorite warband that I've made. I took some influence from the stories of the Scourged and the Corpus Brethren from the Slaanesh video, both of whom I really like, but I wanted to give the Gnawing Blades a more active role in their fall. I think that's more interesting than them being tricked or just cursed. I also thought it'd be fun to have a more melee-focused Tzeentch warband. We don't really have a ton of those, and I think melee is cool, so it's good to have options for that. So that's all the warbands of Tzeentch. I really enjoyed all of them, and it was super fun making new ones for this video. Let me know which one was your favorite in the comments. I still wish that Tzeentch had more unique warbands, but the great thing about Warhammer is that if you want an army to exist, the game gives you the tools to create it and make it exactly how you'd want it. It's a very flexible setting, and that's what makes it so fun. I will be doing more of these videos on undivided warbands, as well as Space Marine successor chapters. Since there are so many undivided warbands, I'll probably divide them into smaller videos to make it more manageable, so look forward to seeing those. I think for my next video I'll do something with Xenos, just to have a little break from all the Marines. I hope that this video helped you decide on what to do for your Thousand Sons army, or introduced you to a fun warband that you'd never seen before. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed this video, it really helps the channel. For now, thank you and have a great day. Bye.